Hello, everybody. The one thing that I want to talk about today in this video is what is the one thing when you're exporting a app, a PowerAutomate flow, or a solution and importing it into someone else's environment? What is the one thing those things do not do? Create data sources, right? Well, I found a way to automate that, and that's what I'm going to show you today. In my next video, I'm going to show you how to create a solution inside PowerApps. So, start off, okay, this is my site, um, but I'm going to take you into my flow. Okay, so you're going to open up Power Automate, and inside here it is simply just a API call using SharePoint's version 2.0 API call at REST call. Okay, so let me get out of this. So I have a flow here that I created. I'm not gonna recreate it. I'm just gonna show you how it works, and then if you guys wanna, if you guys request, I will build one that starts from scratch. But essentially, this is a manually triggered flow, and as you can see, only input I got into this thing is my site URL. That's all it's needed. Everything else is automated through here. Okay, and then I'm storing that. Now I don't have to store it in a variable, but I did anyways because it just seems simpler for me. But you don't have to. You can call it directly from the trigger. So I put site URL string, and then I pulled it from the trigger. Okay. Now, the one thing you have to do in order before you create these data sources is you got to get the site ID. Okay, so I'm taking this variable from the site URL and I'm pulling the site ID with this at rest call. Okay, so that'll get you your site ID. Now, every one of these branches do the exact same thing, so I'm just going to go through one and then the rest are pretty much the same. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check the list we're about to create. If it exists, I don't want it to recreate it, or if it does, if it already is created, it will air out the flow and stop it. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm using the site URL up here as my site address. I'm doing a get method in the call, and I'm basically looking, I'm going into um, the list area, and I'm looking for, and I'm using a filter where the title is equal to whatever the name of the list is. Okay, every one I'm going to set up the same way. So it's doing this call, and then once it gets its results back, it goes on to this condition, and it says if the link if the link is equal to 0 of that call. You know, it's the linked command right here counts how many records are in this call right here. Okay, if it equals 0, it goes over here and creates the list. If it's greater than 0, it means it's created already, and it does nothing and just continues on with the flow. Okay, so that's how I prevent the errors from showing up. Now, the meat and potatoes of this whole video. This one call right here. Okay, what this is doing, it is creating a list or library, whatever I notate in here, and it is a post action, like as you see up here, your site URL, your post, and then you put your API here. But then this is why you need the site ID, because in here, this is general right here. Okay, this is not saying anything about your sites other than the site URL up here. So it's looking for it. You need to put this in here, and then put lists. Okay, and then there's no headers for this, but this body right here is how it makes the list. Okay, you really only got 3 parameters in here because everything under columns is part of columns. Display name. This is the name of your this is your display name of your list. Now, if you make it in a way where it doesn't like it, it'll reformat the internal name. Now, if you want to use the internal name, if you want to create it yourself, you're going to use the name function like it is, or the name property like it is here under columns, but it's for the list. Description, it's just your description. It's not required, but I put one in there so I know what it is. And then you got columns. Inside the columns, you're going to create a table, hence the square bracket. And each one of these lines is a record. Okay. The first one I do. Okay, so this each one of these records is a column inside your list. Okay, this one's got quite a few. Okay, you don't have to do that many though. So name is your internal name. So you want to be careful what you put in here because spaces don't work and some special characters won't work. So what I do is I take the display name and just rip all that stuff out. So this one's called old ID and it's a number field. Now, if I want to put it, if I want to have a friendly name in there, you know, like the display name or the front-facing name, you're going to use the display name um, field as you see down here. I didn't do it for this one, but the rest of them I did. Okay, so like let's use this one. Internal name of admin notes, one word. Display name, one with a space in it, which you can do it. Display name, you can make it however you want. It don't care. The GUID is built off the internal name. So as long as the internal name is great, is what it needs. It doesn't care about the display name so much. It's just for you. And then the third parameter inside this column is the type of column it is. And then if it has certain columns have parameters built within it, you can do that as well. Okay. Now, the neat thing about this is I found all this information on one page in my MS Learn. Okay, and it's right here. And I'll put this link in the description of this video, but it's a column definition resource. Okay, under here, it does give you some basic information about different things, and these are different methods inside that you can use. But down here is what the reason I brought this page up is down here is what I'll show you. Okay, these are all the different column types. Okay, and then in each side of one, if you click on this hyperlink under the type, it will tell you exactly what parameters are available. And then down here, it'll tell you what it is and how to use it. Okay, for instance, you want to allow text entry, which is available in a choice column. If you want that to be allowed, you put true. Otherwise, you put false. Or I think default is false, so you don't have to put anything if you don't want to. Choices. This is required, and this is where you put your choices in here. Okay, and use. I'm telling you, when you're done making this thing, you're going to be tired of hitting the quotes. It's not going to be funny. You hit. There's quotes for everything. Okay, and then you got display as. Okay, this is what determines what type of choice column it is. Okay, you want to now if you use checkboxes, that's your multiple lines of text, or your multiple selection. I'm sorry. And then drop down menu is your single selection, and radio buttons is your single selection, but it displays as radio buttons. Okay. Now if we go back, another one that I use is date time column. Okay. Now, the way it's displayed in the first column, that's how you're going to put it in your in Power Automate, okay, as the type of column. But this over here is just a link, okay? So don't use this name for anything. It's just to let you know what you're doing. Okay, so let's go into daytime column. Now it's got two parameters you can put in there. One is display as, and the other one is format. I strongly suggest if you're doing a daytime field, you need to put both of these in, okay? Because display as is say, do you want it to be friendly, standard, or the default? Okay, I believe friendly is the default, so I like using standard because you don't want to mix them, right? Because friendly is basically today, tomorrow, yesterday, that kind of thing, where standard is just the date itself. Okay, I prefer the standard one over the friendly. Friendly is okay, but if you're trying to figure out what the date is of something is, I'd rather use standard. And then you got format. You can either do date only or date and time. That's when you select if you want date and time or just date. Okay. I'm not going to go through all these, but as you can see in here, you can look at all these up, and I'm going to do one more and then we're going to go back to where I was. Okay. Text. Okay. As you know, there's two kinds of text columns. You got a single line of text, you got multiple lines of text. Now, if you click here, This has a bunch of things you can set. Okay, you got allow multiple lines of items. True. If you mark that true, it turns it into multiple lines of text. If you don't put it in there, or if you leave it false, it's going to make a single line of text. Append changes to existing text. That's only available through multiple lines of text. So if you put true here and you make this false, it's going to ignore this altogether because it's not one of the valid ones. Everything below here, below the multiple lines of text, if you don't set this to true, these won't work. These won't do anything. Okay. Lines of editing, max length, text type. This is where you set your enriched text or your plain text. Okay. And down here, it even walks you through this. Okay, so that pretty much covers this page. Okay, so if we go back to our flow, like I said, here I'm going to blow this up a little bit so it's easier to see. Alright, so let's scroll down here a little bit. You'll notice, let's look at admin notes. Okay, admin notes is a multiple line text selection. Okay, you'll notice I have text as my column name, and then I got allow multiple lines, true. Append changes existing text, false. Only time you got to be dangerous. This is a kind of a dangerous function because if you don't have versioning turned on, this won't work. Okay, because what it does, it creates versions of each of the item and uses that to know what it does. If you're doing this if this is for PowerApps, you can do the same function in PowerApps just by using an expression when you save to SharePoint. So you don't really need to use this from SharePoint. Lines of editing 6, max length 255, and then that's the end of it. Okay. Now, when you're making these columns, you'll also notice, like I said earlier, there is a lot of quotes in here. Okay. If it's not a number, it has quotes around it. Simple as that. Okay. The headers and the data are all got quotes around them. And I ran into a big problem when I was making these before I could get it to work because the punctuation's horrible in this process. But I'm going to show you an easy way to do this without and guarantee you're not going to mess up the punctuation. Okay. Now, when you get done with adding all your columns, the way you're going to end it is after the last line, you're going to put a square bracket and then a curly brace. And the reason for that is to open up the body, you have a curly brace, which means this whole thing's one big record. And then the columns property itself is encapsulated with square brackets. So this square bracket down here is closing out columns, and then, dang it, this curly brace is being closed out down here at the very, very end. Okay? Now, let's click off of that. I'm going to zoom this back out a little bit. Whoops, wrong way. Now, I have 9 data sources in here, all the way across. Okay, like I said, they're all doing the same thing. And then, in my app that I'm building this for, it needs to create a SharePoint group with all those data sources because I'm using a group to determine who's an admin of the app and who isn't. So, of course, this works the same way. It looks and sees if the admin group is created or not. Works the same way. This is my name of my group. So I'm looking. I'm doing a get API web site groups. Okay. Now, if you're looking for a user, it's going to be site users. Filter where the title of the group is equal to this group name. Okay. And what it's doing, it says, okay, now once it pulls this information, whether it's going to have a record or not, it's doing the length of that record. Okay. If it's equal to 0, do the true side. If not, do nothing. And then here, it just creates the group right here using this body information. See, it's going into the metadata. It's doing a type of SharePoint group. And it's creating one called TMT admins. And the description is the description, whatever I want to put in there. Now, TMT stands for Task Management Tracker. That's what I built this thing for. But it works. This process works for anything. And that's all I'm basically doing. So literally, I'm creating all my data sources here in the branched. And then once it finishes that, it's going to go down and make this admin group. And that's literally all this flow does. Even though it looks all extravagant and stuff like that. Now, let's look at a different list here. Let's do this one. Some of these are pretty short. Oh, that's another long one. Let's pick a different one. What about this one? Now, this one's a little shorter. So I'm making a list here. Now, keep in mind, all these are lists, but libraries work exactly the same way. You got your description, my columns. I got a task ID, type of app, library, description, purpose, okay, and name of app. Okay, this is one in my app. It's basically it's asking to make lists and libraries, and this is the information for each list or library. But all these lists have a purpose inside my app, so I need to create all of them. Now, one thing I discovered with Flow, if you have a manually triggered flow, you can trigger it from a hyperlink. Okay, so if you take this hyperlink here and grab everything except for everything, you grab everything before the question mark. Okay, so we'll copy that link and then we'll go open up a new tab here. And if I go paste, and then at the end you put /run. And what that's going to do, it's going to trigger that flow. So you can put it on a hyperlink in an email, in Teams, or hell, you just send it to somebody, however you choose to send it. Hit enter. What it does is it goes to that flow and it runs the run function, which basically triggers the flow to start. Now, keep in mind, this only works for the manually triggering. Now, when it opens, if it's got any required information before it can start, it's going to ask you that first. So here's the name of the flow. You can see it's manually triggered and it's got a SharePoint connector attached to it. And that's it. This is the whole thing. Now you got these details here, but what I'm asking for here is the site URL I want to build all those things on. Okay, that's talking about the list and the SharePoint group. Okay, so once I put that in there, it'll run, the flow will run. It'll say executed flow. So let's put something in here. I'm gonna use my dev site. Okay, so now you don't want to get the whole entire thing unless the whole entire thing is the site URL, which this isn't, because this has got a site page information here, right? So I'm gonna get, so you're gonna look for teams or sites here, and the name right after it. That's all you need. Okay, so I'm gonna grab this part. We're gonna copy it, go back to my flow, and hit paste, and then hit run flow. Now it'll say your run has been flow successful if it accepts your information. Okay. So let's go back in here, and let's take a look at the flow. Now every time I've ran this flow, whether it made lists or libraries or not, it generally takes about, okay, here it took 11 seconds. But as you see, by the time I got here, it didn't do anything. So let's look at this run and see what it did. Okay. As you can see, it pulled my site ID. Let me make this smaller. It's like really gigantic. Back down. Ooh, that's too far. Yeah, that works. Alright, so when it pulled my site ID, and you come down here to the outputs. Oh, that's right, you gotta go into the body. See, there's my site ID. So it did successfully pull my site ID. Okay, so let's go back to the list we've been working with. Now, on this site, I've never made these lists. So when I checked it for the inputs here, so let's go down to the outputs of here in the body. As you can see, the results came up blank. So when it did do the count, it counted 0. Okay. Now, obviously, if you click here, it's just going to give us a true and false. It's not going to tell you what it found. Okay, just all it knows is that it satisfied the condition in here. And then it came in here. Okay, so it went into the site. That's not what I'm trying to show here. Alright, so it went into the web URL. It put the display name of this in here. And then it came down here to... Oh, I guess it doesn't show the column information. But it did do it. Okay. Now, we come down here. Let's go to the groups. I'm not going to show every single group message. That's going to take too long. But if you come down here, you'll see that we look in the output on the body. There's no group created, so it went ahead and created the group. And in here, it gave me a 201 status code. That means it finished it. It actually built it. Now you see it gives you your ID right here and your URI, the owner, the users, the ID of that thing. So like if I wanted to use this later on in the flow and I wanted to pull back up that group it just made, there's your ID right there. I could pull it right from the action. Okay. And then it completed. Okay. Now that took 11 seconds to make 9 data sources and that group. Now let's go back to our site. Let's make sure it actually made it. Even though Flow said it, sometimes it doesn't make them. So let's go in here. Let's go to our site contents. Now keep in mind I got a lot of lists in here, so I'm gonna try to show you which ones it made. Well, I guess you can tell I modified. So let's see. Yeah, it won't work like that. All right, so these are all my libraries. Now, all the ones that it made are going to start with 2 different. Now, keep in mind these are data sources for 2 different apps. Okay, and when I make my next video, you'll see why I did 2 data sources in this one flow. All the ones that start with TMT I just made. As you can see over here, it's today's date. Okay, 11/24, all the way down. Okay, so it made 5 there. Now if I scroll back up here a little bit, you'll see the other 4 right here. You can see that I just made them today, all at the same time, and it literally took seconds. Okay, now the other thing I'm going to show you is the group it made. Okay, so we're going to go to the groups.aspx site, and this will bring us into our people and groups. Okay, and the one it made was right here, TMT admins. Now you can't really tell when it was made because there's no timestamp, but it says this group is used for identification of admins in the task management application, which I told you earlier that's what this is for. So when you open up TMT admins, it's going to show you the people who joined to it. So obviously it's a new group. I think I don't have anybody in it. Now if I go to the group settings, you'll see that it says TMT admins. There's your description that I put in there. But since I ran the flow, it made me the group owner. So once it imports, obviously if they don't want me being the owner, they just got to take this out and put somebody else in there. Okay. Or another SharePoint group if you already have it set up. Now the one thing I couldn't set with this group is this right here. When you're using SharePoint groups with PowerApps or PowerAutomate, you need to set this to everyone, because if everyone don't have access to it, it's not going to have any visibility of this group. Okay, so now I think PowerAutomate will, but I know PowerApps won't. So you need to use everyone here, because who cares who can view the membership? They can't change anything because they got read-only access. Only this person right here does, or people if you use a group. Now, if you change this setting, then that could be bad. Because if you give group members the ability to change stuff, that's bad. And then the rest of this is fine. This is the only setting I wish I could set by default, but I can't. Now, the other downside of using Power Automate to build your lists is the yes/no fields that you create, the Boolean ones. You can't default it to no. There's no setting to set the default, which I thought that was kind of odd. But because if you look in your documentation here, right? If you look under Boolean right here, if you click in here to see what the properties are, there are none. Okay. So it shows your namespace. It goes indicates the column definition holds a Boolean value. That's all it is. It doesn't have Boolean could be many things though. It may not be just yes no. So they only have that one thing, but it does set a yes no column in SharePoint. So it is what it is. So, but making 9 lists in a couple seconds is humongous time savings. Okay, so if they got to go back and do a few modifications after the fact, that's still a lot less work than they would have done because they'd have to recreate them all one at a time the way it was done before. Okay, now the last thing I'm going to show you in this video, since I covered everything already, is I made an Excel as a template so you can copy and paste right into the thing. So like when you're creating these, here, let's go ahead and go. Ooh, don't do that. Um, when you're creating your columns right here, when you're doing this stuff right here from columns down, I found I got an Excel that actually generates this for you, and you have to do very little. Okay, so let me see if I can remember where I put it. Okay, let's go to. I'm going to my OneDrive here. Go to my files. Now, if I can't find it really fairly quickly, I'm going to pause the video until I find it. But just give me a second here so I can bring it up. Office Docs, Excel. Let's do modify, lower to older, column creator. I think this is what I called it. Now, anytime I make this flow now, I use this thing. This thing saves me so much time. Alright, as you can see, I've been using it already. So, what you're doing is, the stuff that's static in the commands, you put in these columns, like the column A, column C, column E, column G. Those will always be the same. And then column H is your concatenation, okay? I'm just basically combining, I know I can't make this bigger, I'm sorry. But this right here is basically a culmination of all these columns, okay? Now, the only difficult part about this is this column right here. This is your function column, right? It's the type of column you're making and all their properties. Now, let me see if I can make this a little bigger. That's a little better. Oops. Come on. Slide this back left. All right, so here's your internal name. And then the next cell over is what you want to call it, right? So these two columns right here, you don't have to put quotes around them. Because I got the quotes. As you can see right here, there's a quote right here. And there's a quote right here. Before and after this thing. So it's encapsulating your whatever you put in the B column in quotes. So you don't put no quotes inside there. You just type your name. So for instance, we'll call this column data 1. Okay? And then over here is going to be your display name, which is your friendly name, right? So you can do whatever you want with that. So we can go column data number 1. Okay? And it will write it just like that. Okay? Now over here, this is a multiple line of text as it's set up. Okay? So if I want a single line of text, all I have to do is literally just remove everything between the curly braces. Okay? And then that's how it looks. Now this thing will be a single line of text versus a multiple line of text. Now, once I'm done making all these columns right here, all you have to do now is come over to this side and basically you just select all the columns that got data in them. Okay? You hit copy and then you go back to your flow and then you paste it in here. And that's it. And the reason it works so well is because you don't have to mess with any of the quotes except The only place you could possibly make a mistake with quotes is in the F cell right here. Okay, because this is your last part of your function, right? So now if you look at what I created over here, by combining all these cells together, it formed exactly the way it needs to be in Power Automate. Okay, and when you copy the table as is, it will put it in one on top of the other inside Flow, and it looks natural. Okay, and that's basically it for creating a Power Automate that builds all your lists and libraries for you, or groups. Now you can actually use this to create a 365 group as well. Um, let's, oops, I didn't mean to do that. See if I can bring it back. Nope, nope. Well, I just want to make sure I don't save it. Okay, down here, if you want to make a 365 group, all you have to do is when you add an action, I believe it's share an item, I think. I don't remember now off the top of my head. It's a groups command, I think. No, it's SharePoint. There's stop sharing. Share an item. Oh, grant access. I'm sorry. Grant access to an item or folder. Okay. Now keep in mind, this works on items and folders. Okay. It does not work on the whole entire list. You have to do that through an HTTP call if you want to do that. Okay. So you put your URL in there of your site, list and library you want to assign it to, and then the ID of the item you want to grant access. Now, no, don't do it this way. I'm sorry. This isn't right. If you want to create a group, you have to do it through the groups command. And let's delete this one real quick. And that is this one. So if you go to groups, oops, I can't spell. Go to groups, okay, and then you're going to click show more, and then you're going to okay, I gotta write this smaller. There's more than that. List my own groups. No, that's our list. Create a group event, update group, add a member to a group. Well, I guess you can't do it this way. You can create a group with. I know you can do it now. Look, in the web client, and if you have access to Azure, you can make a group as well. But so I didn't go. I haven't used the 365 group creator through here. But you can definitely use the groups connector to add people to that group if you want to. Like if you know for a fact that go in there and you can run that in here. But I'm not going to put that in here because I use SharePoint. This is an older application, so I use SharePoint groups. But you can use 365 groups all the same. You just have to add it to the permissions manually if you have one made already. But that's it. That's how you do this. It's really nice. Tomorrow I'll probably do another video for creating solutions, and you can use these together. Okay, so like I was saying earlier, you can take this URL, and the way I built it is I copy this, and then I go into Teams. So let's just go open up my Teams here. This is one for this is for my company, so I'll use my thing here. In your message, we'll turn on formatting. We're going to add a link. We'll call this click to create data sources. Okay. Then you're going to paste your URL in here. You're going to go to the end, and then you're going to put /run. And then you hit insert, and it'll create it in here. So what you see when I hover over it, though, it's the actual command to run the thing. And then what I do is I attach the zip file for my solution onto this message, and then I give them some instructions. Now I did this on my work computer, and I don't have it here, but I basically give instructions on how to import the solution. Okay. Obviously, doing this is just click, 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 next, 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 done. Right. It's really simple, but importing the solution is a little harder. But once you import the solution, everything else is done. It installs the apps, it installs the workflows. If you set environment variables up for your data sources, you just basically got to match it up. And I will show you how to do that in the next video. But these two things together creates your whole it creates your whole thing, so you don't have to do hardly any work. And it generally takes about 5 minutes to do both things. So it's not horrible. So I'm going to leave you off at this. And I will see you in the next video where we talk about importing solutions. If you have any questions or comments, put it in the comments below, and I will answer. I promise you, I will answer them within 24 hours. Sometimes I don't see them go in, and when I go into YouTube the next time I see them, and then I answer them. So, plus I get notices on my phone, so I may be not near my computer at the time, and then next time I get near my computer, I'll answer them. But if you have any questions or comments, put it in the comments, and if you like, please subscribe if you like to. If you subscribe, you'll see all my videos as they come out. And if you like the video, like it for me so I know I'm doing a good job. But I've only been doing this about a year and a half, so I'm still getting used to how to do this. So hope you guys have a wonderful day, night, or wherever you're at. And I'll see you next time.